One of the issues that's come up is that to some of the people we've spoken to, private sector surveillance of individual data is as much of a threat, if not more so, than public sector. When you have either insurance companies or other bodies that have access to things that you do on your app or things like that, that kind of surveillance. Tamir, how much of a threat do you consider that to be in the realm of danger to public privacy and other after effects?
I think, again, it's one of the core issues that we have to deal with in our times. I think privacy in general. I talked a little bit about the state side of it, but there's the same different sort of aspects, but the same dimension of problem on the private sector side. The rules of the road let companies do way more than in terms of collecting your information and using it and extracting useful information out of it, and then using that to make decisions about you back at you. The capacity of companies to do this is far in excess of what it's ever been before. So, and the rules of the road, we have laws, and rules protecting, providing some level of protection there, but their application is murky, and the rules of the road on what can and can't be done in this context aren't very firm yet. So, what's happening is there's through multiple avenues. We each have our. I don't have my phone that I can wave around right now, but we each have our smartphone now, which essentially is constantly collecting information about everything that we do, and all that is getting sent to multiple people without necessarily us being very aware of it, and multiple companies for various reasons. We have every time we're online and using browsing websites, unless we take steps to minimize it, the default is that we are being tracked, and all our activities are being tracked by multiple companies across multiple sites, and are being kept, in a database. And then this information often gets reused and resent to even third parties. And the implications of that are far-reaching. Not only does it mean that the companies that you're dealing with know so much more about you than you could even imagine, but also that other entities that are going to be making, that you're going to be interacting with may well know more about you than you yourself know. I use a couple of examples of this. The basic one is, there's a lot of advertising that comes out of this, and that seems, relatively harmless. So you get an advertisement sent to you based on, this really detailed profile that was collected on you based on what websites you visited, or with your GPS-enabled phone, your location-based enabled phone, what stores you walked past. Target, which is just making its entry into Canada, Target had a really sophisticated profiling mechanism for the purchases of its customers, and it figured out that when female customers of a certain age range start buying certain types of goods, it suggests that they're likely to be pregnant soon. And we're not talking about like baby chairs or diapers, but certain types of snacks, that kind of thing. So they apply this algorithm, and when people showed up in their 80% chance of having a baby soon column, they started sending them ads saying congratulations on the baby, here's a coupon for a carriage, and this one lady got one of these congratulations postcards, and I guess her family opened it before she had told them, or even realized herself, I can't remember exactly, but told them, told anybody that she was actually pregnant. So, the sending of these targeted, highly informed ads can have an impact on the individual. There was other examples from this in the early Facebook days where, someone was logged into their Facebook account and they bought an engagement ring, which was obviously something they wanted to keep secret, but Facebook announced to their friends that they had just purchased a ring, because they had this program that would endorse products that were purchased while you're logged into Facebook, and the person wasn't aware that Facebook was able to see that they bought this thing on another site while being logged into Facebook. But in any case, the story was that, well, I guess they had an elaborate engagement plan, but it was the intended engagee, I guess, found out prematurely when she noticed on her wall that her boyfriend at the time had bought an engagement ring. So things like that happen every once in a while. But more concerning is like, in order to send those targeted ads, which marketers do believe, are more effective at getting people to purchase products and are worth more for the advertising industry. An immense databases of all our activities are being kept and tracked and analyzed in this way, and that could be problematic for a number of reasons beyond just the receipt of that targeted ad that reveals something about you didn't want to be revealed. So, for example, we're seeing now that we're getting smart cars that are able to track everywhere you went all the time, as well as also how fast you went, how often you're turning left and turning right, like how often are you taking your corners, in a not hazardous way, but a way that maybe a signal to your insurance company that you should be billed at a higher premium, and that's a problem because the insurance company, if they get that data, and they can get it, might start billing you at a higher premium. But it's also a problem if you ever get into an accident, and all that information can now be subpoenaed by a court, by the person suing you, and it's not. People tend to think that more information leads to a more informed, factual outcome of a dispute like that. But the reality is that we're in an adversarial world, and when someone is suing you and is going to subpoena all your data held by your phone company, your car company, and all these other companies that have collected everything you've done, everything you've said on your Facebook page, and everywhere you've been for the last 5 years, they're going to be able to find things that will paint you in a picture that is not favorable to you more often than not. And this could really impact on your ability to defend yourself in a variety of mediums. The lawsuit medium is one where you can get that information if you're suing someone, and increasingly, companies insurance companies and other types of litigants are getting that info and using it against people in a lawsuit. Another one is going back to the state surveillance context, which I began with. The government can also get that information, and often, if there's a concern over, it could often, it's hard. If someone what it means is that if someone takes an interest in you and thinks that whether you did something wrong or not, thinks that they want to make the case that you've done something wrong, there is almost enough information on anybody out there to start making that case. And that's a concerning problem that we're going to have to, the impetus for that is the private sector sort of, that's collecting a lot of this information. So we're going to have to decide at some point. Like I think those types of issues and the repercussions of that are starting to be felt in several sectors of society. But we're only on the beginning of it. So that the collection is expanding. We're starting to get to the point where everywhere where you essentially have an ubiquitous location tracking and recording system, where everywhere everybody has been is actually recorded somewhere and is searchable. Once we have all that information once we start taking for granted that all that information is there and all that information is going to be there, and we start thinking of ways to incorporate that into all our decision making, it's going to have serious repercussions for people. Now, usually the rules around this type of data protection involve the individual, making sure that the individual can make informed decisions over, who's collecting what about them when. But again, we run into the digital literacy problem again. People aren't necessarily very easily able to understand exactly how they're being tracked, how that information is being collected and used, what types of high-end analytics are being applied to it, what assumptions are being drawn about them from that. Yeah, the digital, I think this is a big problem. It's becoming worse. Other layers of this that are still starting to emerge we're starting to get, there's concerns that, price discrimination will start to happen. So the ideal for a company is to know that, Glenn is willing to pay $10 for this tea, and Evan is willing to pay $5 for it. And if I know that, and I'm willing to pay $2, and if a company knows that, then they will ideally charge me Glenn 10 and you $5.50 if they want to extract an extra 50 cents from you. But that type of charging model is some people would feel it's an inherently unfair model, and it's one that is impossible to operationalize in the real world where you just have a price tag on things. But when you start to send people prices or coupons based on this type of really sophisticated knowledge, you can start having a world where everybody gets their own price to things, and that's not necessarily a fair world in the way that you're used to. Other types of unfairness that's starting to emerge is a lot of these profiles, which are highly sophisticated, are being used for for companies to make loan decisions. We think this person has these characteristics and has gone to these sorts of places, so we think that maybe they're not the best. Maybe they're not a good idea to give a loan to. Hiring decisions, or more and more admissions to universities. All these people who make those types of decisions are increasingly looking to these data stores to make their decisions. And again, we're used to presenting ourselves in specific ways to different audiences, and the sort of infrastructure, the private sector infrastructure as it's developed, is eroding the ability to keep doing that. It's already having repercussions for people, and the repercussions are going to get worse because there aren't necessarily the tools in place to address that, or the knowledge for individuals to address it on their own.
So, would you say that the way to address these issues, the way to address this hoarding of private data and the abuse of it, is this going to be handled best by regulation, or is it going to be by the public being more aware of things and fighting back? You now start to have tools like the DuckDuckGo search engine that claims not to track people. Do you see there possibly being a backlash in consumer choices of things that won't record what they're doing, or is this something that we're going to have to rely on regulation to deal with?
I think you're going to need a mix. The regulation, I think, is an important component of any response, because just to give one example, when Facebook first launched, it was actually the privacy protective option. It was built around a very sort of privacy protective concept. You had small networks of people sharing things in a very contained way, but without concrete regulations in place, anything like that, once it hits a certain critical mass, it could very easily evolve. There's nothing to make it stay that way, and part of the problem is that people don't have the time to keep up with the changes, and constantly, it's a constant battle. So you can use something like DuckDuckGo, which probably never will sort of go that route. But that's just kind of that's one sliver of your online interactions. You can try to build your own phone that doesn't have that isn't ubiquitously sending out your location to everyone. You can, but ultimately, I think that without a regulatory answer, you're faced with a bunch of false choices. So you should be able to use the applications. You shouldn't be locked out of using applications and interacting with your friends through applications on your mobile phone. You should be able to do that, and you should be able to do it with a certain reasonable amount of privacy. Not 100% privacy, because that's never the goal, but a reasonable amount of privacy. And I think only a regulatory solution would ensure that those types of rules are in place for everyone at all stages. It also requires a lot of education for the public to understand exactly what's happening to supplement that, because the regulatory solution can't. There's too many. It's a whack-a-mole problem. There's too many moles popping up. The regulator can never solve all of these, right? It could just provide guidelines for how everything evolves, and make sure that some of these that there are those types of platforms, but. Supplementing that, you do need a lot more education for people to understand exactly how their information is being used when they're operating online, what tools are available, to sort of increase their privacy when they're doing things online, how to make use of those tools, and so on. So, like DuckDuckGo is an example. There's a lot of plugins and add-ons and adjustments that you can make to various devices and browsers that are out there that will help you. Help increase your privacy online. So I think a combination of the two is necessary. Neither one is good without the other. And then also just more education on the harms, because the harms are very they're not immediate harms, so you don't immediately feel the detrimental impact of this I was going to say Angry Birds, but I'm going to be, again, neutral. Like this pool app collecting, everywhere you've been for the past, 5 years and keeping it in a database. You don't feel the immediate impact of that. It's a far off detrimental impact potentially. So I think a combination of education on the harms, education on the tools, as well as some regulatory support is what will help.